We have now begun the process of getting into the American Revolution. What caused it? We need to talk about the overall context of the revolution. There are typically two schools of thought here, although there are many more. Historians are never really going to agree upon what exactly caused the American Revolution. They're going to focus on this, they're going to focus on that, and so this is definitely not an exhaustive list to the schools of thought. One school of thought is called American Exceptionalism, and basically it means that the American Revolution began the very moment the first Europeans, particularly English, are coming here into the New World. Think about it. According to this school of thought, the earliest Englishmen that are coming over here are going to be rebels. They're not going. They're going to be at least outside the mainstream of English society. It's human nature. If you are doing well in an area, you're not really going to stay. You're not going to leave suddenly and change your surroundings. Things are looking good. However, if you are downtrodden, if you are persecuted against for your religion, for example, your political beliefs, you're going to want to leave. And so the people that are coming over here into the Americas are generally going to be people that aren't really successful in England, and therefore they're going to leave and try to make a living out here in the New World. That's one interpretation. Another interpretation, and one that I personally advocate, doesn't mean that you have to take it for gospel, is the idea of a change of relationship. Basically, between 1642 and 1763, the Crown, England, really doesn't do anything when it comes to its colonies. We call this period salutary neglect. What does it mean? Salutary means healthy, and neglect. Well, generally when we neglect things, it's a bad thing. If we neglect studying, we're not going to do well. If we neglect eating well, we're not going to live a healthy lifestyle. But here, this neglect is healthy. It's a good thing. It basically means that the Crown, for the most part, left the colonies alone. Let them do whatever they want to do, for the most part. That's pretty much the policy between 1642 and 1763. But something changes in 1763. The relationship changes. Suddenly, England now gets involved in American affairs. Picture it this way. Think if you imagine you're living away from home for the very first time, and particularly let's just pretend it's the fall semester, and the first time you go home is from school is going to be Thanksgiving break. So basically, between August and November, you have been doing whatever you want. Study when you want, go out when you want. Let's say at 4 in the morning, you get hungry and you're looking around your refrigerator and you can't find anything that's worth eating. Instead, what you do know is that there is a fast food restaurant that's open 24 hours. Let's just call it Whataburger. Well, Whataburger's open 24 hours. What are you going to do? You're going to get your car. You're going to get dressed. You're going to get in your car. You're going to drive over there, eat your food, come back. Probably feel disgusting, but at least you're satisfied. Did you hear me say anything about getting permission from anyone when it comes to leaving for Whataburger? No. I mean, if you have a roommate, your roommate's really not going to care. You might tell him or her that just to let them know that you're going to be gone. But generally, they're not going to say, no, you can't go to Whataburger. They're going to leave you alone. And then, of course, Thanksgiving comes around. You go home, and again, you're hungry, and you're tired of turkey, and you're tired of all the fixings. You want Whataburger again. So 4 in the morning, you get up, you put on your pants, you put on your, you get your wallet, your phone, your keys, and you're about to leave for the door. And then suddenly, as soon as you put your hand on that door knob, what happens? Your mother or your father is going to ask you, where are you going? Now, most responsible parents were probably going to say, no, you're not going to Whataburger. But rather than accepting your parents' judgment, imagine that you throw a fit. Imagine he's like, you know what? This is absolutely unacceptable. I'm leaving. I'm going away. I've been able to go to Whataburger for the last 3-4 months without any permission, and darn, I'm going to go now. And in fact, I'm just going to go home and go back to school. That's kind of like what the United States does during this time period, or at least the Americans do at this time period. Something changes. Something changes in the relationship between England and the colonies to the point that the colonies are they've been used to going to Whataburger every night at 4 in the morning, and now suddenly mommy and daddy come down and say no. And rather than accepting any sort of explanation, the Americans say, you know what, enough of this. We are out of here. And so this is going to be the process of the United States. Suddenly, people in the Americas can no longer do things that they would normally able to do for a long time. Much of this is going to start because of the rise of the throne of a man named George III. George III is going to be the last monarch to rule over the American colonies. And let's talk about him for a second. First of all, he's 20 years old when he takes the throne. His grandfather dies, and he takes the throne. His father dies in early death, and so it's going to be up to him. And the problem is going to be is that whenever you have a young monarch, you're going to have a very dynamic ruler for the most part. And like any 20-year-old or any George III is going to basically be a guy that says, you know what, I know what's right, and everyone else that disagrees with me it doesn't know anything. So imagine 20-year-olds, but with the control of an entire empire, and you can understand George III a little bit. He wants to reform the empire. He wants to make it work because of the fact that England's in serious trouble. As a result of all these wars that we've been talking about, England is in a severe debt crisis. In fact, let me get the right number. They're in debt up to a tune of 130 million pounds. Now, I mean, today, we think about the American debt, and at the timing of recording this video, it was $19 trillion. So, I mean, that's a drop in a bucket compared to the American debt. But nonetheless, when you think about the budgets of England during this time period, the interest on that debt alone took up half of the royal budget. So something needs to be done. Some sort of reform needs to be done. And George III is going to be looking around, and he's going to notice something. He's going to notice that his American subjects are living better lives than his home subjects, the subjects here in England. Well, he's going to look at it. He's going to go, this is a world turned upside down. These, the colonials are supposed to be dependent on us. Yet they're living better lifestyles. They're healthier, they're living longer, and they're even paying less taxes than a typical Englishman. That's, like I said, a world upside down. So since these wars, particularly the French and Indian War, was fought for the Americans on American soil, it's only logical that the Americans should pay for the war. And that's exactly what George III is going to do. And so he's going, a lot of the things that's going to happen between 1763 and the coming of the Revolution is going to be basically an attempt to pay off these debts in order to make the English state solvent. And one way is through what I would call homeland security in today's modern vocabulary. For example, after the French and Indian War, the British left the army here. There's a standing army in the Americas, close monitoring the American colonials and protecting them. That has problems of its own. Read about the colonial experience, read about even our founding fathers. And one thing they do not like is going to be a standing army. Armies should be basically, brought together whenever needed and then disbanded when they're not. Well, there's a standing army here, and the idea is to protect the colonists. And so what's an easier way to protect colonists? Are you going to let them just run around and be wherever they want to be, or try to basically corral them, try to keep them close to each other so that you can stage your troops anywhere they need to be? Well, corralling them is going to be certainly a cheaper option. You can concentrate your forces. So in 1763, the Crown announces the Proclamation of 1763. And basically what that does is it says no colonists can no longer cross the Appalachian Mountains. All right, the Appalachian Mountains, think of them as the western border of the colonies, if you will. So no colonists can go west of these mountains. So what's that going to do? Well, keeps the colonists closer to the ocean so that they can be better protected by British soldiers, and also the fact that they would not be subject to Indian attacks on the frontier. But here's where the change of relationship goes. Did any time that I talked about during the colonial lectures, did I talk about them not being able to travel wherever they want? They could go anywhere they wanted, and now they could no longer go across the Appalachian Mountains. They could no longer go to Whataburger at 4 in the morning. So therefore, this is this one little mark against the English crown in terms of taking away freedoms, changing this relationship between the colonies and the mother country. Another thing that they're going to do is they're going to try to save money through what's known as quartering acts. And basically what this means is that colonists are required to house and supply English soldiers. Again, what's more cost effective? Feeding, clothing, and housing your own soldiers at your expense, or let somebody else do it. That's what, so that's one of the things that England is going to do in terms of cutting costs. And of course, this is going to be a very controversial maneuver, so controversial that it's actually included into our Bill of Rights in an amendment barring the quartering of troops in civilian homes without permission. Now, the English are not making up a lot of things. They're not making up a threat. There are threats in this period, particularly from the Indians. Well, for example, we have a Pontiac rebellion, which basically is between 1763 and 1766, and basically the Pontiac is going to go and he's going to lead a major force against the British colonial forts out in the frontiers and attack them and sack them. And this rebellion is only put down by basically the first instance of the purposeful use of biological warfare. Pontiac's men will approach a fort and they will be invited into the fort to negotiate a surrender, and the people inside are going to present the Indians gifts. Well, these gifts are in the form of blankets. Well, no one tells them that there's actually blankets from the smallpox hospital within the fort. And sooner than you know, there's going to be a major smallpox outbreak that occurs during right after these negotiations. So the Indian threat is real. But nonetheless, the British are going to start restricting the rights of American colonists to travel wherever they want, and they're going to force them to house and feed soldiers even if they don't want to. And so these are kind of the things that are going to occur that change the relationship between the colonists and the mother country. We're going to see a lot more in the coming lectures.